There used to be like 100 seed companies. Now there's 4 that control 60% of our seeds. There used to be like 100 of food companies. Now there's like 9 that own all the other ones. There used to be, lots of fertilizer companies. Now there's like half a dozen that control all the 400 billion pounds of fertilizer made every year. So there's a big consolidation, and they have enormous power. It's a $15 trillion industry. It's the #1 business sector in the world. It's about 17% of our global economy, and it's controlled by a few dozen CEOs that are, committed to protecting their shareholder value and selling more stuff. The way Coca-Cola makes more money is selling more Coke. There's an enormous amount of lobbying and influence, and the way the food company controls the narrative is through multiple strategies. One, they corrupt science. So they fund 12 times as much science as funded by the government. And it's like Gatorade, oh, it's good for you, and it's funded by Pepsi. And Coca-Cola doesn't cause obesity, funded by Coca-Cola. Sugar's not a problem, funded by the coalition of, big food companies. It co-ops scientists in different ways by funding their professional associations, the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. All are funded in part by the food industry and by the ag industry. And so they're not actually completely independent. They shouldn't be making guidelines and recommendations. And then you have front groups that they create to confuse the public, like the American Council on Science and Health, which essentially says that GMO is fine, that pesticides are not harmful, that smoking is okay, and high fructose corn syrup is good for you. It's kind of almost ridiculous, but they present themselves as this independent group. When you look at who's funding them, it's all big food. So you have all these front groups, and then they co-opt social groups, like the NAACP and Hispanic Federation are funded in part by the food industry, which is why those groups who are the most targeted and affected by the food industry and the soda and processed food are the ones who are opposing soda taxes and opposing food reforms, because of how they're funded. Now, where I spoke once, was with Bernice King, Martin Luther King's daughter, in Atlanta, and I wanted to present this movie, Fed Up, at the King Center, which is all about how sugar and food was causing all this obesity in kids and stuff. And she was all into it. She says, nonviolence means nonviolence to ourselves. And a few days later, I got a call. We can't show the film. I'm like, why? She says, well, because Coca-Cola funds the King Center in Atlanta. they gave $1 million in the Super Bowl to create free admission to the social justice, human rights, civil rights museum in Atlanta. It's like they know what they're doing. And then on top of that, there's 187 lobbyists for every member of Congress. So they control science, they control public health groups, they control social groups, they fund research, and they control politics. So 187 lobbyists from every member of Congress. Just on the anti-GMO labeling law, they fought that, and it was $192 million in 1 year that these companies spent to oppose that one piece of legislation. They spent $500 million on the Farm Bill, 600 lobby groups. They have so much power, and I remember sitting on a boat with a senator this summer, and in a sailboat, and we had 2 hours just chat. And I started laying all this out for him, and he was like, his jaw was open. He just didn't understand this, because he doesn't get educated by people like me. He gets educated by the food industry. It's like pharma companies. They educate doctors on, I call it continuing pharmaceutical education instead of medical education. So this is why we have this problem.